Hi, I'm Scott at ediblemusic.com. I want to help you solve a very common problem that can come up when you're mixing vocals, which is trying to get the vocals to occupy a wider space in the stereo image. Sometimes width can be achieved, or this problem can be resolved simply by turning the channel up, making it a little bit louder, or by making some EQ adjustments and looking for those middle frequencies that will help to improve the sense of width. But in other instances, it doesn't really help at all. So I've got this song that I'm working on here right now. The vocals are processed fairly well so far. They're sounding pretty good. There's no effects on them, no delay, and no reverb. But I'll show you how the problem manifests in this song, because the vocal, despite it sounding okay, there are these other parts of the arrangement that are occupying the edges. And that actually has the impact of making the vocal feel narrower. It makes it feel smaller. I'll show you what I mean here. So as it plays through, just keep your ears focused on the edges of the mix and how the vocal is not actually very present there right now. I can try to adjust the volume a little bit, move that up and down. The vocal sounds pretty good so far, but adjusting the volume doesn't really help very much. It makes the vocal louder, of course, and feel a little bit closer to you, but it doesn't help it to extend outwards to the edges of the mix. So the solution that I want to show you how to make use of is by setting up a parallel saturation channel and running the vocal through that. Your workstation will have a whole bunch of different distortion and saturation plugins that I really encourage you to have fun with and experiment with and try out how they affect the sound of different tracks. In this case, I'm going to use the soft tube saturation knob. I just picked it up a little while ago and I'm enjoying it. It sounds pretty good so far. So I'm going to try it on here.
My head, I'll slowly fade and softly whispering.
And it's very simply designed. I'll show you what it sounds like when it's driven very hot. Pretty cool. But I like it to be just around where that lamp is kind of glimmering a little bit. That's where I like it so far anyway. Now, as I bring this in, you can focus your attention to the edges of the mix again. And you'll notice as I bring in this saturation that the vocal seems to step outwards a little bit. And that's the first step of doing this. So we've added our saturation. I'll add the track in now. And I'll turn it on and off a couple times to compare. That's the first step. There are a couple more. It's worth having a good understanding of why saturation is able to perform this kind of solution for us. When you're looking at a frequency spectrum or an EQ display, you see the lines of a sound that come up. What saturation does is it actually adds in more sound, so it makes the sound more dense. Saturation is really capable of kind of opening up a sound because it adds additional frequencies all the way up towards the higher end, so it can add a sense of airiness, a sense of openness to a sound. But in this instance, because we're working on a vocal that's sung quietly, that's sung in a higher register, you can instead just focus on the frequencies that will actually be most helpful for you. And in this case, it will be more of the mid-range frequencies, and those will help us to enable the vocal to step a little bit further out towards the edges. So I'll set up an EQ here. I'm going to reduce those top frequencies and a little bit in the middle here as well. I'll turn it on and off to compare.
The sky tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering. I close my eyes, thoughts wandering away.
I'll show you a comparison here.
The sky tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
Now you can definitely feel the vocal beginning to occupy out on those edges, where the strings and all of those effects are. Suddenly, once you turn on this channel, the vocal seems to come out in front of them a bit. There's one more step that will be even more helpful to doing this, and that's using a delay effect on this channel. It'll be a nice short delay, very subtle, but it will have the effect of adding an additional step that pulls the vocals out towards the sides.
Tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices
And ping pong
in
delay,
my head are
and maybe a bit of detuning as well.
fading, softly whispering. Follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering. I close my eyes, thoughts wandering away. The sky tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering. I close my eyes, thoughts
And as I show you to compare this, we'll return to the beginning where the vocal sounded fine, but it was narrowed by all of this information that the program has on the outside. And as I bring this in, you'll notice that the vocal one at a time begins to occupy those same spaces and to step in front of that part of the arrangement.
I close my eyes, thoughts wandering away. The sky tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
Yeah, pretty good. So keep saturation in your cupboard if you are having trouble getting your vocals to sound wide enough. It puts them in a good spot, and now the vocals are more well prepared in order to have delay and reverb applied to them. You could also send this saturated channel to your delays or your reverbs, which will continue to help to increase the sense of width. But it's a good practice, or it's a good reminder here that sometimes mixing solutions have to be taken just one step at a time instead of doing one enormous grand gesture. Adding these things up helps to resolve that problem. Give it a try.